The red light from the brake lights in front of us kept flickering in and out as rain streaked across the windshield. The cabin was quiet. Too quiet. Her hands were at 10 and 2 on the wheel, tapping to a rhythm that didn't match the song on the radio. Then it happened. My phone buzzed. Just once. A short, sharp vibration in my pocket. Normally, I wouldn't check it while riding shotgun, especially not while she was driving. She hated that. Be present, she always said. But something about the timing, right as we turned off the highway ramp toward our street, felt off. Wrong. Like that buzz hadn't been random. Like it had been waiting. I pulled it out. There was no name. Just a local number I didn't recognize and a preview of the message. How can you still sit next to her after what she did in? That's all it showed. I opened it. The full message read, how can you still sit next to her after what she did in room 311 on Tuesday night? If you really want proof, check the voice memos on her phone. But don't wait. She deletes them. I blinked. No breathing. No words. Just cold. The kind of cold that doesn't come from air conditioning or a cracked window. The kind that starts in your ribs and spreads to your fingertips. She didn't glance over at me. Didn't ask who it was. Didn't notice that I'd stopped blinking. Her voice cut in casually. Want to grab some ice cream before we head home? Ice cream? Seriously? I looked at her. Really looked. Her left cheek twitched when she smiled. She only did that when she was nervous. I mumbled, "Nah, I'm good," and she nodded like nothing was wrong. As we turned into our street, I locked my phone and slid it into the cup holder. I didn't speak. Because if I had, I knew my voice would crack. Because if I had, I might have screamed. Because if I had, she might have lied. Instead, I waited. And that night, after she fell asleep with her back to me, I tiptoed out of bed and picked up her phone from the kitchen counter. It was still warm. The screen lit up with her face, smiling. But I wasn't smiling anymore. I opened her voice memos app. There were 7 recordings. Only one had a title. Tuesday night. I pressed play. What I heard wasn't silence. It was her voice. Laughing. And then another voice joined in. His. And that's when the shaking started. Not in the phone. In my hands. I don't know how long I stood there, just listening to that awful, muffled laughter playing through her phone speaker. I didn't recognize the guy's voice. That made it worse somehow. If it had been someone I knew, maybe a friend, a coworker, at least there'd be a face to the humiliation. But this was a stranger. A faceless, invisible man laughing alongside my wife like I didn't exist. The audio wasn't long. 43 seconds total. Not enough to give me clarity, but just enough to shred my peace. Her voice was higher than usual, like she was trying too hard to sound carefree. I couldn't make out every word, but I heard this clearly. You better not save this. I'm serious. Then a giggle. No one would believe what I just said anyway. More laughing. Then silence. I played it again. I needed to be sure I hadn't imagined it. That she'd really said what I thought she had. That she'd really told someone something no one else should hear. And that she knew how damaging it would be. Why else would she warn him? I didn't sleep that night. She curled up on her side of the bed, completely still, breathing slow. Like it was just another Sunday night. I lay on top of the covers, fully dressed, scrolling through her phone, not because I wanted to, but because I couldn't not look anymore. And it didn't take long to find more. Her notes app had been wiped recently. All blank. But the recently deleted folder? It still had fragments. A grocery list. A packing list. And a single note that chilled me to the bone. Don't forget to say it was Renee's husband who picked me up, not the rideshare. That was dated Tuesday. The same day mentioned in the message I got. My throat dried out. It was 2:41 a.m., and I was sweating like I'd run a marathon, even though I hadn't moved from the kitchen stool. I started connecting dots I didn't even know existed. She had said that Renee's husband offered her a ride after their girls' night. I hadn't asked questions. I trusted her. I actually thanked her for being honest. Now I was wondering who picked her up, where they went, and why she needed a backup story. A man doesn't write that kind of reminder to himself unless he's planning on lying. And it didn't seem like her first time lying, either. That kind of note? That's not clumsy. That's calculated. I was spiraling, and I knew it, but I couldn't stop. I opened her Maps app, checked the location history. She had disabled it weeks ago. Then I remembered. Her smartwatch. She never took it off. It was still charging by the bathroom sink. I tapped through the recent locations. It had synced with her phone at some point, and there it was. Marriott, City Center. 7:12 p.m. to 10:49 p.m. Tuesday. My hands went ice cold. I didn't cry. I wish I had. Crying would have meant feeling something more human. Instead, I sat there numb, watching my whole marriage shift shape in my mind like it had been made of water the whole time. I didn't want to believe it. I still don't. But the numbers didn't lie. The voices didn't lie. The erased notes didn't lie. The only one who had lied was asleep in my bed. And what scared me most was how easily she had done it. By morning, I had memorized that audio clip. Every shift in her tone, every breath between words, every stifled chuckle from the man I couldn't see. I kept the phone in my hand until the sun rose, half expecting more messages to come through. Nothing did. Just that one spark, one thread pulled from the fabric of our lives that had already started to unravel everything I thought I knew about her. About us. Clara came downstairs around 7:30. Hair wet from a quick shower. Dressed for her Pilates class. She poured coffee like it was just another Monday. Smiled at me. "You okay?" she asked, sipping from the mug we bought in Asheville last fall. "You look like you didn't sleep." I stared at her. I actually stared, trying to find it. The guilt. The discomfort. A flicker of regret. But there was nothing. Just those calm eyes and that same practiced smile. I wanted to throw the phone across the room, scream at her, demand the truth right there and then. But I didn't. Because deep down, I already knew I wasn't going to get the truth by asking for it. So I smiled back. A weak, pathetic smile. "Just a headache," I said. "Didn't sleep much." She gave me a kiss on the cheek before grabbing her keys and heading out the door. I watched her walk to the car and drive off like nothing was wrong, like the night before hadn't happened. It struck me then, the problem wasn't just the lie. It was how easily she lived inside it. After she left, I got back to the voice memo. Played it again. Slowed it down. Rewound it. Focused this time on the man's voice. He had a softness to him. Not the gruff tone I imagined. More familiar. Like someone who knew how to speak to her casually, almost fondly. It wasn't flirty, it was worse than that. It sounded comfortable. Practiced. Like they'd done this before. Like there was history in his laugh. And then I caught something I hadn't before. It was barely audible under her giggle. But it was there. Just 2 words, quick, like an inside joke. "Remember David?" That's when my stomach dropped. David. Clara had only mentioned that name once in the past year, and not in a way that made sense at the time. I remembered it now because of how she said it. We were watching some show about failed proposals and she muttered under her breath, "Thank God I didn't end up with a David." I asked her then, "You dated a David?" She laughed it off and said, briefly, "College." Total narcissist. Then changed the subject. But now it hit differently. Now it felt like that briefly had a new meaning. I started digging. I found an old yearbook in a storage bin under the stairs. Clara's senior year from Temple University. There he was. David R. Levinson. Debate team. Business club. Posed smile with the quote, "Success is the best revenge." I Googled him. He worked locally. Owned some kind of marketing startup downtown. I found a photo of him at a recent conference. Balding a bit. Confident grin. Still had that same intense stare from the yearbook. I looked at the timestamp again on Clara's smartwatch. 7:12 p.m. to 10:49 p.m. at the Marriott. His company's office? 2 blocks away. This wasn't random. This wasn't a fling. This felt old. Deep. Like something that had been buried a long time ago and had recently clawed its way back to the surface. By noon, I couldn't sit still anymore. I needed to know if she was still seeing him. If Tuesday night was a one-time mistake or something worse, something continuous. So I made a decision I never thought I'd make. I called my brother-in-law, Clara's sister's husband, Mitch. He works in private security. And I said the words I still regret having to say. "Do you still have that guy who does tracking work? Discreet stuff?" There was a pause. Then a quiet, "What's going on, man?" I didn't answer. Because how do you explain something that hasn't even happened yet? All I knew was I was done being the last one to know. Mitch didn't ask any more questions after that first call. He just texted me a number and wrote, "He's not cheap, but he doesn't miss." I hesitated before saving it. There was something brutal about that step, like crossing an invisible line. Until now, everything I'd done had been in the shadows, quiet observations, silent suspicions. But this was active. This was war prep. The guy's name was Carl. Mid-40s, former law enforcement, now fully freelance. We met at a diner 2 towns over. I told Clara I had a morning meeting with a supplier, which technically wasn't a lie. I just didn't say what kind of supplier. Carl wore an old army jacket and brought his own creamer for the coffee. He got straight to the point. What do you need to know? Where she goes. Who she sees. I don't need a movie. Just facts. Truth. He nodded like he'd heard this 1,000 times. Probably had. Then he pulled out a small black case and opened it. Inside were 3 different types of GPS trackers, all no bigger than a matchbox. You driving her car? He asked. I nodded. Pop the hood when you get home. Stick this under the fuse cover near the firewall. Don't worry about water. It's sealed. It was surreal, like I was becoming someone else. The version of me who used to bring Clara tea when she had a headache wouldn't recognize this man sitting across from a stranger, plotting quiet surveillance like a bad TV villain. But I didn't feel evil. I felt desperate. That afternoon, I installed the tracker. She didn't notice. She was on a work call, pacing barefoot around the house, laughing at something someone named Jared said. Her voice had a bounce in it. Light, playful. I hated that I used to love that sound. For 2 days, I got nothing. Her drives matched her calendar. Gym. Office. Quick stop at the dry cleaner. I started to believe, almost hoped, I'd lost my mind. That maybe I'd taken a coincidence and a cryptic message and spun it into a full-blown collapse. But then came Thursday. She told me she had a late meeting and wouldn't be home until after 8. Standard. Nothing strange. I nodded, kissed her goodbye, even helped her load a file box into the back seat. At 6:14 p.m., my phone buzzed. Vehicle stopped. Location, Midtown East. Not her office. Not the gym. Not any place she'd mentioned. I clicked the map. It was a parking structure across from the very same Marriott. Not the same spot she'd parked before, but close. Close enough. I stared at the screen like it was going to blink and change. It didn't. I stayed calm. I waited. I didn't even call. Just sat on the couch, watching the blue dot. She stayed there for an hour and 43 minutes. Then the car moved. Home by 8:31 p.m., right on schedule. She walked in like nothing happened. She smelled like her usual perfume. Not a hair out of place. But here's the thing. When she took off her coat, something dropped out of her inner pocket. A lanyard. White. Branded with some marketing company's logo. And attached to it, a clear sleeve with a folded name badge inside. The name printed on it wasn't hers. It was his. David Levinson. My hands froze as she bent down and picked it up. She didn't flinch. Didn't stammer. Oh, she said casually. That must have gotten mixed in with some folders Renee gave me. She tossed it in the recycling bin without another word. I said nothing, but I watched her hand the entire time. Because it didn't shake. Not even a little. That lanyard haunted me. Not just because of whose name was printed on it, but because of how smoothly she'd dismissed it. No hesitation. No I twitch. Just a simple deflection, casual as breathing. That's what shook me the most. I'd once known Clara better than I knew myself, or at least I thought I had. But now, every movement, every word felt rehearsed. Like I was watching an actress play a role, and I wasn't even sure if I was still in the script. I didn't sleep again that night. I lay beside her, the glow of her smartwatch charging on the nightstand, while she slept soundly. Her breathing was even, calm. I'd never envied someone's peace before. But lying there, staring at the ceiling, I found myself wondering what it was like to lie so well that you could actually sleep afterward. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I did something I hadn't done before, not because I hadn't thought of it, but because I wasn't ready. Until now. I opened her laptop. The one she kept for work only. The one I'd never been allowed to use because it was synced to her firm's network and full of sensitive client stuff. It wasn't locked. I don't know if she was careless, or if part of her wanted to get caught. But either way, it opened right up. Her browser history was clean. Too clean. As in wiped. Recent tabs? Empty. Passwords? All saved, but only for sites like her project management tools, banking apps, flight check-ins. Nothing personal. It was polished, organized, and almost boring. But then I clicked on the calendar app. Not the standard one. This was a hidden plugin buried in her browser extensions, labeled something vague, PlanSync. It wasn't linked to her work calendar or her phone. It was separate. Manual entries only. My chest tightened. There were only 6 entries in the past 3 weeks. All on Tuesdays. All between 6:30 and 10 p.m. Each one was marked with a single word, off-grid. And next to each, a little orange dot. I clicked the most recent one. It opened to a location tag, latitude and longitude coordinates. I copied and pasted them into maps. It was a lakefront condo complex 30 minutes from our house. Private access. Gated. I recognized the area immediately. We'd looked at units there 5 years ago, back when we were trying to decide if we were ready for the next chapter. Clara said she didn't like how isolated it felt, said it didn't have enough light. Now I realized she just didn't want us both living near where she planned to meet him. I closed the tab and nearly dropped the laptop when I heard her walking down the hall. I slammed the lid shut and tossed it onto the couch like I hadn't touched it. She entered wearing her usual office attire, drying her hair with a towel, humming something under her breath. "You're up early," she said, smiling. "Yeah, couldn't sleep again." She frowned with fake concern. "Still that headache?" I nodded. And then I watched her walk past me like she hadn't just left digital breadcrumbs leading straight to a hidden life. Like she wasn't actively maintaining a parallel calendar, scheduling time to be off-grid, while I sat at home wondering if I'd left the dishwasher running. As soon as she left, I texted Carl. "I need eyes on a new location. Condo complex near Glenview." She's been there more than once. He didn't ask questions. He just replied, "Already tracking. Let you know next visit." Then he sent a second message. "By the way, that guy, Levinson, he's not exactly subtle." I stared at the screen. "What do you mean?" A few seconds passed. Then a photo came through. It was grainy, taken from a distance. But it was him, David Levinson, standing in the doorway of a bar, drink in hand, with his arm around Clara. Not in a romantic way, in a familiar way, like they'd done it 100 times. The timestamp? 2 months ago. Long before I got that first anonymous message. Long before I realized my marriage had an expiration date no one bothered to tell me about. Carl didn't send anything else that day. No more photos. No updates. Just silence. And that silence? It burned. Because now I knew with certainty, that she was seeing him regularly. Knew that she'd lied to me, not once or twice, but over and over, with that same calm smile and practiced cadence like it was part of her daily routine. But even knowing that, I didn't confront her. I couldn't. Not yet. I felt like I was standing in the center of a burning house, and if I moved too fast, everything would collapse before I could make sense of it. I needed more. Not revenge, not yet. Just truth. Solid, undeniable truth. The kind of truth even she couldn't spin. That next morning, Friday, started like any other. Clara had back-to-back calls. She locked herself in the office. I pretended to be on mine, too, pacing the living room while replaying the voice memo in my head for the 100th time. I was about to text Carl again when I heard the doorbell ring. We weren't expecting anything. I opened the front door and didn't see anyone. Just a manila envelope lying neatly on the welcome mat. No label. No stamps. Someone had placed it there by hand. My first instinct was to bring it inside carefully, like it might explode or stain my carpet with ink or some kind of petty sabotage. But when I opened it, my entire body locked. Inside were photographs. 5 of them. All printed on matte paper, no watermark. The first one was Clara, clearly her, outside that same condo I'd seen on the map. She was wearing a long beige coat and black boots, her hair down, her hand reaching for the door buzzer. The second? Her inside. Sitting on a sofa I didn't recognize, across from David, who had a wine glass in one hand and his phone in the other. He was grinning. She was laughing. The third showed them standing, close. Too close. Her hand was on his chest, and her head was tilted back like she was listening to something he whispered in her ear. The fourth made me drop the envelope. Because it wasn't Clara in that one. It was me, sitting alone in my car. Same day, same timestamp. Someone had taken a photo of me from across the street while I waited outside a coffee shop less than 3 miles from that condo. I had gone there to cool off, thinking I needed a walk, a distraction. But someone had followed me. Watched me. I picked up the last photo with a shaking hand. It was a note, not a picture. Typed. Short. "This goes public next. Or you leave her now. Your call." There was no signature. No logo. No indication of who had delivered it. For a full minute, I just stood there, staring at the table like it was going to start talking. Like it might explain who knew what, and why they were suddenly involved. This wasn't just cheating anymore. This was a message. A threat. From someone watching both of us. I called Carl immediately. "Did you send something to the house?" I asked, nearly breathless. "No," he said without pause. "Why?" I told him. He swore he had no idea where the photos came from. But he sounded worried. More worried than I'd ever heard him. "Whoever dropped it off," he said, "is either trying to help you or scare you into staying quiet. Either way, they know more than I do. And that's not good." I hung up and sat on the couch, staring at the photos again, one by one. There was no logic to any of it. Why would someone threaten me with photos of her affair? What did they gain from that? Unless this wasn't about just the affair. Unless Clara wasn't just lying to me. Maybe she was lying to someone else, too. Someone with teeth. And I had just stepped into the middle of it. I didn't leave the house all day. The photos were still on the table, spread out like puzzle pieces I couldn't quite fit together. I kept going over the timeline in my head, trying to track when things had started unraveling, actually unraveling, not just in hindsight, but in real time. The more I thought about it, the more I realized something that made my skin crawl. I wasn't the only one being watched. Someone had eyes on both of us, maybe even closer to her than I could imagine. By evening, I hadn't heard a word from Carl. I texted twice, nothing. That wasn't like him. He was the type to send a thumbs up for even the smallest update. I was beginning to feel like the ground was shifting under me. At 6:48 p.m., Clara texted me. Running late. Don't wait up for dinner, red heart. I stared at that little heart emoji like it was an insult. 10 minutes later, Carl called. His voice was tight. Quick. I got into the condo building. What? I asked. How? Talked my way past the guard. Said I was a fire inspector following up on smoke sensor complaints. Stupid, but it worked. My heart started racing. What did you find? There was a pause. Then he said, she wasn't there. I blinked. What do you mean? She didn't show. I watched the entrance for 2 hours. Levinson came in around 5, alone. He was on his phone, pacing the lobby. Kept checking outside. Like he was waiting for someone. But she never came. I didn't know what to say. Then Carl said something that knocked the air out of me. I followed Levinson when he left. He drove to a strip mall on the north end of town. Parked in front of a wellness clinic. Place called Ascend Therapeutics. Ring any bells? I froze. Because it did. Clara had gone there before. Twice. Said it was for hormone balancing. Something to do with a fatigue program her doctor recommended. But when I looked it up weeks ago, the website barely explained what they actually did. Just vague language, discrete therapies, client-driven wellness, advanced treatment plans. Nothing specific. Nothing clear. Want me to go inside? Carl asked. I told him no. I needed to check something first. After we hung up, I went straight to Clara's filing cabinet, bottom drawer. She kept random folders there. Tax documents, old receipts, things she meant to shred. It was all just clutter. But wedged between some utility bills was a folder I'd never seen before. Plain blue. No label. Inside were intake forms from Ascend. Only, they weren't hers. They were for someone named Marissa Cooper. Same birthday as Clara. Same address. Same phone number. But a different name. I stared at it for almost a minute before the realization hit me like ice water down my back. She had registered under a false name. My wife was operating under an alias. And not just once. Multiple forms. Different dates. Different service codes. All billed to a credit card that I didn't recognize. I sat down hard, the folder in my lap, trying to remember if she had ever mentioned that name before. Then I realized she had. Once. Briefly. 3 years ago, we were at a dinner party with her coworkers, and someone asked what she'd have called herself if she'd ever gone into acting. She laughed and said, probably something dramatic and fake, like Marissa Cooper. Everyone laughed. And I forgot. Until now. I texted Carl. Marissa Cooper. That's her alias. Start looking for connections under that name. 10 minutes later, he replied. Already on it. And Ryan, be careful. If she's been using fake IDs and new cards, this goes deeper than a side affair. I didn't sleep that night. Because suddenly, this wasn't about cheating anymore. This was about secrets. Real secrets. And I was married to someone I didn't just not recognize anymore. I wasn't even sure she was still real. By the time Saturday rolled around, my chest felt like a locked drawer full of questions I no longer wanted the answers to. I hadn't confronted her yet. I hadn't said a word about the folder. I hadn't mentioned the lanyard, the photos, the messages, or even the fake name I now knew she was hiding behind. I kept waiting for the perfect moment, the kind you see in movies, where the hero demands truth and everything crumbles in dramatic fashion. But this wasn't a movie. This was real life. Messy. Quiet. Slow. Clara came home early that afternoon. No Pilates, no excuses. Just her walking in with groceries, humming to herself. She seemed calm. Lighter, almost. I watched her move around the kitchen, noticed things I hadn't in weeks. The way she stood on her toes to reach the cabinet. The way her hair curled slightly at the ends when it dried naturally. She looked like the woman I married. But everything I knew about her had changed. Still, something in me, something I didn't expect, whispered, wait. So I did. That night, I placed the folder on the dining table and walked away. No yelling. No notes. Just that blue folder sitting where she'd find it. When she saw it, she froze. Her face changed instantly. Not to fear, not even to guilt, but to something I didn't expect at all. Sadness. Real, raw sadness. She opened it, flipped through the papers, took a deep breath and sat down. For a long moment, she didn't speak. Then she looked at me and said, I was going to tell you. I just didn't know how. I didn't say a word. She leaned back and folded her hands. Marissa Cooper was me. In college. Not legally. Just emotionally. When things were bad. When I didn't know who I wanted to be. That name was my way of disappearing without actually going anywhere. Her voice cracked a little, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in weeks. Truth. She continued, the clinic? It's not for hormones. It's a trauma program. They don't advertise what they do because they work with women in high-risk emotional situations. Abandonment. Manipulation. Surveillance. I went back there because I thought I was falling back into old patterns. Not with David. Not romantically. But with myself. And I panicked. She pulled out her phone. Unlocked it. Opened her messages. Here, she said. You can read everything. All of it. She handed it to me. And I did. I scrolled through texts. Messages to her sister. Her therapist. Even one to David. He hadn't been her lover. He was her emergency contact from college. The one who helped her through a breakdown no one in her family even knew about. She'd been leaning on him quietly. Maybe too quietly, but not because she was hiding an affair. Because she was afraid of seeming broken again. I sat there, stunned, trying to balance what I had imagined with what was unfolding in front of me. Clara reached across the table and took my hand, tears in her eyes. You always saw me as strong, she whispered. But I needed you to see me as human, too. The envelope on the doorstep? She said she'd been receiving them too. Someone from her past, a former therapist who'd been fired from Ascend, had been harassing her for months. He'd threatened to leak her records if she didn't pay. She hadn't told me because she was trying to protect me. And suddenly, everything made sense. The tracker? She already knew. I found it 3 days ago, she said softly. And I left it there because I knew you needed to know. I figured if I lost you, I at least owed you honesty. We both cried that night. Not out of guilt, but out of exhaustion. Two people who had forgotten how to talk without fear. In the weeks that followed, we didn't fix everything overnight. But we started over. Not with apologies, with conversations. With truths. I deleted Carl's number. She gave me the login to everything she had. And I gave her something I hadn't in a long time. My trust. And in return, she gave me hers. There are no perfect marriages. Just people trying. Failing. Rebuilding. And for the first time in a long time, we weren't pretending anymore. No more lanyards. No more aliases. No more silence. Just us, finally, on the same side of the table again.